welcome to the podcast, Meagan Duncan.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Pleasure having you. And I would say you are my first international guest. You're my first guest from across the pond. We've had only UK guests so far, so you're finishing off season 1 by coming in and sending us further afield. I believe you're in Colorado, aren't you?
I am. Thank you. Yep.
Have I got that right? Yeah, which is a completely different climate. And it's going to be a really interesting chat, I think, because there may be some sort of cultural differences in conversations or things that you know. And I certainly know, looking from your Facebook page, that your natural physical environment you live in is completely different to where I'm based. So that might throw up a few sort of interesting conversations. But let's kind of introduce you through your brief bio, and then I'll let you sort of talk about your journey a little bit, if that's okay. So you're the founder of Connected Kids Thrive and the Positive Behaviour Guide. So you've had quite an interesting journey, as far as I can see it, because you have a lot of hats that you've been wearing: speech therapist, foster mum, parent coach. You've had a nature-based preschool. So there's an awful lot of experience you're bringing to the table to a conversation around those issues. So should we just chat briefly about your journey? Do you want to kind of explain how you've ended up where you are right now?
Sure. I'll just say I was invited to be here by I serve nature schools. I'm a behavior specialist, and I was asked to serve nature schools by a nature school founder. And so what I'm doing is my absolute pride and joy, and I was asked to do it by another colleague. So, but how I got here, gosh, to go all the way back to, I guess, childhood. I was raised in a cult. And so, not to spend too much time there, but, it shaped my belief systems and how I approached things, and then got out of it with my husband. I met him, boyfriend, girlfriend. He said, I got to get you out. So we left and went to college. Before college, I tried my hand in childcare, and I was working in a regular childcare, and looking back, not only it didn't feel great when I was there, but looking back, I realized how problematic it really, really was. But did childcare. Then I started my own childcare, and that kind of all became a foster mom. And that kind of all has really equipped me to serve nature schools in the way that I do now.
And that whole journey, I mean, like you say, not to dwell on it too much, but to start off, it's so interesting, isn't it? You started off in the cult and you've ended up doing what you've done now. There could be a whole podcast on that just alone, couldn't I imagine, really? But it's a fascinating journey. And I think when we spoke briefly before, one thing I sort of noted was this idea that you are what I would term a bottom-up specialist, in the sense that it's your experience that has shaped you to the point that you are now, as opposed to going out and finding or gaining lots of qualifications and then working down. You've come from, this is what I've learned on my journey, and I've built it from that. So it's kind of very kind of organic and very genuine approach to behaviour support and all of those things that you talk about as nature-based schools. It's possibly worth touching on a little bit in terms of the previous podcast I had where I spoke to Sarah Blackwell about forest schools and how nature schools are a little bit different to forest schools. Am I correct?
So yes, there's no hard definition. It's language, and it's, no one gets to own it really, in my mind. And from what I understand, schools are generally 100% outside. They're in all weather. They really just use the elements and those opportunities that nature bring to educate the children and help the children, tap into their capabilities and their curiosities. And it's a really beautiful model. Whereas nature schools, I would say forest schools fall under the umbrella of nature schools, because nature schools can, as long as the program or school include a lot of nature for the children, a lot of access to nature, then it's a nature school. I had a preschool, and we became even more nature-based through my journey of being a founder of that. We were inside sometimes. We did a lot of cooking. The kids loved that. In fact, sometimes they liked that just as much as going crawdad fishing and building dams and tents and all of that. They loved our meals together, cooking together in my kitchen. So I still had a nature school, even though we did inside things also. We were outside, 60, 70, 80% of the time, but that's still a nature school. And some schools don't have a lot of opportunities to get kiddos out into open nature space. And so as long as the guide or the founder is really trying hard to bring in nature, I think they could be maybe considered a nature school too. Obviously, the raw, organic, getting kids out is the goal, but there is no hard definition of what a nature school is, in my opinion.
Recognizing, guess it's recognizing as part of your ethos that the outside is important to young people, and especially more so today, where there are challenges with it being easier to be indoors sometimes, whether that's in school or at home. Whereas when I was younger, certainly being outdoors was naturally just a part of my life. So it probably wasn't as important to have a nature school, because if we weren't in school, we were in nature.
I think we're not supposed to be separate from nature. We are nature. Humans are nature. And I think we're supposed to be connected to other nature to really live in our essence. And so that's why I love working with nature schools, is they prioritize that part of a child's environment so much that we don't, and that, kids outside able to run and meet their physical needs. There's so many less challenging behaviors, because kids are getting many of those needs met. Whereas, when kids are confined to desks all day, inside four walls all day, we've got a lot of environmental modifications that we need to do before we ever look at the child's challenging behavior of themselves. You know what I mean? So that's why I love working with nature schools. They already understand so much of the setting component. Now, sometimes environment and how I look at it and how I teach it, a child's environment is both the things and the beings. So of course it's the trees, it's the trails, it's how the guide has set up, the stools around the fire or whatever, but it's also the beings, the educators in the environment, the other children in the environment. And so both aspects need to be really looked at and very intentionally supported. And so, that's where I come in. Is nature schools generally got the setting piece, that part of a child's environment, but I come and help with the beings piece, getting the educators equipped and understanding behavior so they can approach it better with children, so they can really help a child feel adequate, levels of belonging and significance to actually reduce challenging behaviors from ever happening in the first place. I love to start there with schools. And then, of course, we can deal with some challenging behaviors that come up. But when a child's environment is set up for success, the children have so many less opportunities. They need to feel, the need to present a challenging behavior.
I think you touched on something there as well that I think is quite important to consider, is that just because people make a life choice, a life decision to engage and work with young people for their career, doesn't necessarily mean, if that's not part of their training, that they are able to deal with those behaviours until you've come across those challenging behaviours. You've worked in an environment, or you've worked with young people with challenging behaviours, whatever the motivating factor for that is. Sometimes there is no training for that, is there? Other than when people like yourself come in and kind of go, actually, I've got something I can offer you here because I've got all this experience. And I would say when I'm good with those behaviours, it's because of my experience, not my training. And it's because I've worked, I get those kids now. I understand it because I've come across so many of them. So it's kind of like yourself, really, a bit of a bottom-up approach to it. But I like the idea of things and beings, and it's really important to acknowledge that, I think.
It's essential to think about. And some nature schools forget to think about it a little bit. And they're like, I took the four walls away. Why are we still struggling here? I did what I was supposed to do. I've got a beautiful curriculum, and I've got the beautiful property, or the setting, and it's that being piece that, but they're also schools are so dedicated to up leveling so that the children are happier, that staff is happier, the parents are happier. And so it's a really beautiful, I feel very, very lucky in what I get to do.
And I think it's fabulous to acknowledge the fact that, just because you've created an area, as schools, it's very popular over here. Forest schools are very popular in schools over here at the moment, which effectively makes some schools nature schools, or attempting to become nature schools, that they build a lovely, beautiful area in which to do that and feel that the area is the solution. And for some young people, it really can be, can't it? If you just literally put them in that space, their behaviour changes. I know I've worked with some significantly challenging young people who, if we take them to the local woodland, their curiosity is suddenly piqued. They will be asking about the tadpoles in the pond, what species of duck that is. They want to find out certain things which you would never, or just, I want to climb that tree, those kind of things. You see positive behaviours. There's definitely a soothing impact to being in nature, isn't there? And the importance of tagging that onto schools. But you are correct in saying that sometimes that beings aspect of it is overlooked, maybe. And you've acknowledged that and kind of recognised that and come in to help with that.
Exactly. If a guide Yes, like you said, sometimes just getting, actually, oftentimes, most of the time, I would even say, when just getting kids outside will just eliminate so many pent up challenges that's going on for them. So they don't have a need to even present those. They've been checked. If that guide, even when they take the kiddos outside, if that guide, the teacher, the educator, or even a parent doesn't understand some things, we can still really set a child up and ourselves up not for the most successful outcomes. Something that I talk about a lot is the 500 to 1,000 tendency. And what that speaks to is how many times a child is told what to do in a day. It generally ranges from 500 to 1,000 times a day. And so if a guy, if we got kiddos outside and we're constantly saying, what's that? What's that? What's that? Do you like that? And just asking all these questions and trying to get information and make sure we're checking the boxes off of, what are they learning and all these things, that's still really contributing to that 500 to 1,000 times of telling them what to do. And there's ways, and that's what I teach, are ways to make sure that connection is strong between that guide and that child, but watching our own body language, our own tone, watching the kinds of questions that we're asking. There's a variety of questions that, we need to be attuned to. And so that we don't start chipping away at a child's dignity and a child's natural curiosities. We invite them to fight us toe to toe often when we're asking so many questions and so much from them.
I think you're right. I had a lady called Nikki Harverson on a few podcasts back talking about the value of play. She was a cycling coach, but she was talking about the value of effectively what we might call child-centered learning, but the idea of the child being left, as an adult, as a teacher, as a coach, as a parent, just observing and watching and looking for those opportunities, as opposed to we have a tendency, I think, increasing tendency to need to chip in and
Yes.
you are right to tell them what to do. I was listening to Radio Only this morning talking about the fact that we seem to have a desperate need to structure our child's time more and more into activities, as opposed to, I guess, when we were younger, just being left to create that sort of learning for ourselves. But we didn't realize it was learning, did we? We didn't call it learning. It was just play, just being outdoors. And only now, looking back, do I realize what those experiences were giving me from when I was younger. And I think it's something we need to get better at, definitely.
And I think, yes, 100%. And it's really finding the power of the pause before we jump in and try and offer our wisdom and 2 cents, or even our like, oh, be careful, the power of the pause. And what I invite teachers and parents who are bringing their kiddos out is go through the 5 senses before you jump in. That will slow your body down and see if you even need to jump in. Because what is the child hearing as they're engaged? What are they seeing, hearing? What are they smelling? And how is this impacting them? And it just helps us do something, because it's really hard for adults to just do nothing. And when we can find the power of waiting and doing nothing for a minute, we're really allowing space for more authentic connection versus those surface level. Is that a leaf? Is it crunchy? That type, is that from an oak tree? You know what I mean? That type of surface level stuff, we can really give space to go much deeper. And what's even better is when we catch a child's eyes and they invite us in to expand on their learning. Like, that's the gold.
And that's kind of the dream, isn't it? And strangely, I've said in the podcasts that I've done with various people, bearing in mind they're all loosely connected to education and learning, that comes up time and time again. It even sort of came up, I remember it came up in the episode about clowning. Where the guy there was talking about, as a clown, that's what you're doing. You're waiting to make that eye contact with the audience to see what they're expecting you to do and how they want you to engage with them. It's just a really interesting kind of idea there. I think as well that I love the term power of the pause, which I've never heard put that way, which I'm going to pinch if I may, and I may use that in my day-to-day life at some point. But the idea that because of the way that young people's lives are structured and their engagement with tech and screens so much, is that there often is no pause for them. So let alone us, there's no pause for them. And I think for them, if we pause, they learn to pause as well, don't they? And I think they learn to exist in the moment when there may be nothing going on and they're just wondering, or they're just experiencing the sound. Or, I've been out with young people and you hear, and it could be anything, it could be a woodpecker that they've never heard before, and they can see that sort of like, it's not confusion exactly, but it's, I've never heard that before. What is that? And you are right to say that as a teacher, I want to immediately leap in and go, that's a woodpecker, and then start throwing woodpecker facts at them. But actually leaving it a moment, really challenging, because in my training as a teacher, you're kind of taught that you are the knowledge power. I have the power of knowledge and I give it to you, as opposed to sometimes you can figure this out for yourselves. And I think that comes from a strange pressure as adults and as educators and teachers that we have an end goal here. I need you to learn things so you can pass things. But in those kind of situations you're describing, it doesn't matter, does it? We're not imparting knowledge for an exam. We're just...
Yeah. I think, when we save our wisdom imparting tendencies, for really special occasions, kids can really open up and receive it much more than they're just wisdomed at all day. I love that. It's a new term I just made up.
No, you made that one up, and I really like that. I'm going to write that down, because it is that. Doesn't make sense what we're doing as teachers when we're in schools. We are wisdom atting all day. I need you to know this, and I've prepared this knowledge for you. It's not a buffet from which you can pick. I'm telling you which sandwich you're going to eat right now. So I love the idea of that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I guess, and this is one thing that comes up time again as well, anything nature-based, outdoors-based, is that is an opportunity for learning to occur spontaneously and organically. You may have some ideas in your head about maybe what you would be wanting to teach them in a particular environment, but there's opportunity to just discover, isn't there?
Yes. And, we can make space for those wisdom imparting opportunities, because we do have, boxes we have to check too sometimes. And, unfortunately, in our training, as you've kind of mentioned, there's in all the years of training, it's how to impart wisdom. It's not often how to listen to kids and how to really see what their, self-discoveries are and what value that's bringing to their essence. But, there's time for both. There's time for letting them be the drivers of their own curiosities and their own learning and their own wisdom discoveries. And then there's time where we can invite a deeper level of that if that's something we need to do.
And this is something you talk about, that drive of their own curiosity, is something I'm trying so hard to allow pupils to do in my school setting. I do have flexibility a little bit more than a mainstream setting, with it being an SEND setting, to have that creativity and flexibility to follow pupils' interests a little bit more. But I do also fully appreciate that in your mainstream setting, your mainstream school setting, that is such a fundamental challenge for teachers and educators to be able to follow pupils' interest. You may be a music teacher and you find you've got somebody who loves a certain instrument, and it seems that's quite an easy thing to follow because you can give them lessons and they can progress that way. But it's a real challenge to even find out about young people's interests quite often, isn't it? Unless you're in a smaller setting, that's almost kind of your ethos, and you're kind of setting out to do that, and you're listening for those opportunities, consciously trying to find out what those things are. And my internal battle is really, there needs to be a huge change in the education system, particularly, certainly here in the UK, and from what I'm hearing over in the US as well, there are those changes needed. But how on earth do you implement that en masse? And I'm not asking you that question expecting to hear an answer, because if you have the answer, then, you shouldn't be saying on here, you should be monetizing that somewhere else, shouldn't you? But it is the challenge, isn't it? And all we can do is listen and find those opportunities whenever we can.
I don't think any problem is unsolvable. I think everything is always figure outable. And when parents and educators have had enough of enough, I think big changes will come. And when they lock arms together and just make it happen, it will happen.
I would say we're seeing I was just going to say, I think we're seeing a small move over here towards that, with more and more people taking their young people out of education and homeschooling. Not always well, is what my understanding is, but they're taking them out and then kind of go, I don't know what to do now, but I understand that the system isn't working for them. So there is a bit of footfall, I would say, of people protesting and having the opportunity to protest more than they used to.
I think this is totally researchable, but the person who thought of the idea of putting 18 3-year-olds together in a room was a good idea. I'm sure many of us would love to have a conversation with them. Like, who decided that their date of origin or their date of creation is the determining factor of of all the boxes they need to fit in. Anyways, yeah. And with all of that, again, 18 3-year-olds together is just a crazy thing that we have done to ourselves and to them. And that's just not a natural environment at all.
But then we continue to do it, don't they? Because then they progress on to be 18 4-year-olds, 18 5-year-olds, 18, and throughout school, they're
Oh,
staying
yeah.
in these groups that are never, I mean, you know, and again, this has been talked about in a few episodes, but, you know, the idea that really how we're grouping these kids together, why are we not grouping them by interest, by sort of academic ability, by social ability, by, you know, all sorts of ways you could group them together that are never sort of considered.
Well, and kind of beyond that, even like we need to be putting multiple ages in with kiddos. Maybe not all day if we need to have different kinds of things we're studying or whatever, but the learning opportunities that aren't able to happen when older kiddos aren't mixed with younger kiddos. You know, the older kiddos don't get to tap into their capabilities and be those models that they know they are. The younger ones don't have anyone to look up to that's a positive model really that they want to be like. It's really when there's 18 3-year-olds in a classroom, they're all vying for the one or two educators' attention. And who gets the attention? The ones with the biggest, loudest, most, you know, challenging presentation of
Yeah.
behaviors. Those are the ones who get the attention. And so we're reinforcing all the wrong things, and we're not giving enough model opportunities for positive models and for
And you're
kids to
absolutely
tap.
right. You're absolutely right. I mean, I see it in my eldest, who is now, not to promote her podcast or my cat podcast, but has started her own little podcast with her friend. Her friend, they're both homeschooled. So
Mhm.
mine are homeschooled and she's homeschooled as well, her friend. She's 16, mine's 13, but they're really good friends. They connect through this, but you wouldn't know when they're talking. But I can see that my daughter sort of has that, what you're saying, sort of looking up from and also learning from. She's learning
Yeah.
on the podcast. I can hear it when I'm editing them, you know, that the language, she's learning how to speak, how to, you know, how to ask questions.
Oh,
All those things are coming because the other girl is 3 years older. That kind of modeling of behavior is there. You're absolutely right. And more of that would be done well. More of that would be very good in schools. I think you're exactly
yeah,
right. So perhaps moving on then to the behaviors themselves. Because there's a
that's
whole
right.
question there, isn't there, as to your specialism, if you like, is helping people with these challenging behaviours. But the core question is, I guess, what is causing these challenging behaviours? And there are all sorts of kind of reasons for that. I know last time we spoke, you threw something at me that I've written down, thought was really interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong on this statistic, Meagan. 250 preschoolers a day are excluded in the United States.
Yep. Suspended or expelled in the United States. Yep. A day.
Yeah. And it's really worth highlighting that we're talking about preschoolers. So we're not talking about older young people where you may have expected to see certain behaviours. These are very young pupils where we're seeing behaviours already. So in your experience, what do you feel is the driving factor behind a lot of these behaviours, these challenging behaviours that we're seeing?
Yep. Environment, beings and things, not the child. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can, you know, teach the child some skills and some replacement behaviors, but they're missing so many opportunities to find belonging and significance that I always come back to connection, trust, always bringing it back to that foundation. But until their environment, the setting is appropriate for them, they're getting plenty of opportunities to move outside, lift heavy things, have opportunities to take risks, get a little scratch without everyone freaking out, and just all these really important things for a child to really know how capable they are. And then the beings, the, you know, parents, educators, we have done some, you know, terrible things that let me back up and say we have, oh goodness, just allowed things to happen to us and to a child's environment that is just not setting them up for success.
So do you feel that there is a fundamental problem with the way that schools are physically designed?
Oh yes.
Because I do, and
They're
I
run
could
like
agree.
prison.
Mm.
They're run like
Even
prisons.
even to some extent, that if you stand in a playground and look, you've got a fence going around and very little for young people to do. So you almost have got a prison yard at break time, haven't you?
It's run
And
by
it's a
bells.
15-minute break.
Yep, run by bells, 15 minutes to eat. Don't talk while you're eating. I mean, it's horrendous. Lots of kids have to walk with, you know, some schools have their kids walking behind with their hands behind their back so they don't touch each other. Like, what are we doing? And so as adults become more and more distracted and stressed, it's, you mentioned it before, those screens come in and the connection is fraying, and kiddos they're not, that belonging and significance is fraying. You know, chore time is so important. in the home and at the school, where we're contributing to the greatness of the whole. And if a child isn't doing that, then what is their purpose? And they feel that they're not contributing anything of value. Anytime when I had my preschool, that the kiddos, I just felt, gosh, if I ever felt that our connection was fraying, we would create something for the neighbor together.
Yes.
And it fixed it because they were doing something good for someone else. They could be thanked. Then they could tell their parent, like, we did this. Oh, wow, that was so. Then they tapped into their goodness. They knew that they could make a positive difference in the world, that they were a good human. Again, belonging and significance. And that's being forgotten and put on the back burner for later. I'll tuck my kid in or read a story later.
But as we know, when you try to tag things in later, things often never get tagged in. So when you try, I'll do that later, it means it will never happen because you've stepped on that conveyor belt, haven't you? And there's a couple of things there when you're talking about that. I just literally just occurred to me that when I was younger, that sense of kind of belonging and purpose and things like that didn't necessarily come from school. It came things like me being in the scouting movement when that was part of that. So the part of that was going out and helping people or making things or doing that. So that came from that. But I think in terms of schools as well, how can they have that sense of belonging when their day is dictated, like you've said earlier on, the day is dictated and structured around subjects they haven't necessarily chosen or have an interest in. It's thrown them on this conveyor belt. So how would they feel they're achieving anything when we're telling them what we think they should achieve, whether that be learning French, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, or now you're going to go and do physics, or there's no choice, is there? There's never a choice. And I think that's part of the fundamental problem, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. A friend sent me a meme or an infographic this week. People send me stuff like, Meagan, what do you think of this? And so it talked about, back, in the day when I was your age, it was an adult talking to the present teen, right? And, back in the day, I had a job, a family, I'm working weekends and you can do your homework is basically what it was saying. And I'm just like, you had dignity back then. You had purpose. Why would a child care about homework? They have no purpose. They don't feel a purpose for themselves. The economy, everything looks so, why bother? And I think our greatest job now is to help come along beside them, kiddos of all ages, and help them find their goodness and help them, their goodness naturally, but also how they can do good for others and how they can present themselves to make the world a better place. Because that's what we're all trying to do. You, me, people listening, we're all trying to change our little corner of the world to be better. And that's our purpose.
And I think we don't want this to come with age. It often comes with age, doesn't it? As you get older, you realise that you are looking for something. You're looking for the thing that you love, you want to do, your purpose, whatever that happens to be. But actually, we want people young people to find that much earlier, don't we? I think, for example, school, it says it gives them choices when they get to take their options for what over here would be study as our GCSEs or our A-levels. But we're giving them limited choices. So again, it's not a choice, is it? And when are we taking those skills that they have and really thinking, that's what you should be doing, and how can we develop that for you? And that's not solely a school's responsibility, is it? No, there's parents involved in this and other people involved in this. But we need to be identifying more and more what skills and talents they have when they're young. I would say one of the beautiful things about homeschooling that we found is that with my eldest, she's discovered her passion for theatre very young. I mean, it's the West End or bust of it, really. It doesn't seem to be a plan B. She's latched onto something and she's super passionate about it. And we discovered with my youngest things like crafting and a love of animals and all these sorts of things that you can see because they're not in school. We can then go, oh, I see who you are. And you can see those, and you can channel that more. She still does other things, but it gives you those sort of opportunities. We don't do that in schools.
Yeah. And something that you mentioned, which I hadn't really thought of before either, was you're saying, I see who you are. And then she goes, oh, I see it too, right? In a regular, busy talk down, I impart all my wisdom to you. You can offer me nothing because you're a child. In that type of environment, we don't see them. We're seeing our agenda, all the stuff we got to impart on them from A to Z all day. And we don't see them at all. We're looking at what we're told to do by our bosses who don't see us. Because teachers have so many beautiful things. They got into this work for all the right reasons. And, then their hands are tied by all the things they have to do, and they're not seen either. And it's really
And
sad.
actually, that can be done within even within the current system. That can be done because that is just you as an adult identifying somebody, recognizing a passion, and saying, "I see your passion," and that's something you should do, or you should at least pursue that as a hobby or an interest or whatever, you know. And I think over my teaching, I've been teaching 25 years now, and over that time, there have been times when I've done that, and you kind of wish somebody had done that when our generation, or you know, when we're younger, because it's a really invaluable thing you could be doing as part of teaching. It's not just, this is my subject, I'm giving you the knowledge, but I'm also going to act as a mentor when I see those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Because you said, I mean, because it's not I'd say these behaviors, a lot of it falls onto teachers and educators and people working with young people, but they aren't to blame, are they? I don't feel they're to blame. I don't feel I'm to blame for the behaviors that I see, that I have to do my best to not deal with, for want of a better word, but to try and support. And you've said environment and people. I mean, it's always a tricky conversation when you're talking about parenting, isn't it? I think.
It's tricky, and I'm gloves off at this point. We have got to hold parents accountable. They had these children. I know things are tough, but the more we coddle them and take responsibilities from them, the more they are backing off of their own responsibilities and taking accountability. You know, a school and a parent partnership can be so beautiful, but it takes both. And I also believe teachers have a duty to deepen their understanding of behavior. I don't think it's only parents that should be doing that. But parents, if you want your teacher to understand your child's behavior better and approach them better, do it yourself too. There's lots of trainings out there. There is no excuses. My husband and I, I am obsessed with taking behavior trainings. This is what I do. But we took our first parenting class, and it wasn't because, hey, let's go do this to be better parents. Unfortunately, I wish that was our story. It's not. We wanted to foster and adopt. So that was part of the requirement to do that. And our first parenting training changed our life. It got us on the same page, and we have been in a honeymoon since for the last 10 years. And so it is life-changing just to understand behavior better, get on the same page with your parenting partner so that you're reinforcing the right things. If we're seeing behaviors repeat that we don't like, it's being reinforced somewhere by us or the teacher or something. And so, if we can all do a little better with understanding behavior, and children will fare much better. And you know what? When we understand more about children's behavior, we understand more about ours, and we can be better models, because it always starts with the adult in the room. And so we need to understand behavior so that we know if how we're approaching a behavior is going to be effective or helpful or not.
And there's something to be said for having to solve, I don't want to call it a problem, but having to solve there's certainly a rise in challenging behaviours in schools. Since I've been teaching, there seems to be that significant rise.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that's coming from that, I feel, definitely is from the statistics, is actually pushing people out of the job. That people are leaving in droves. It's not just one or two. There are people, lots of teachers are leaving, or they're coming in young and not hacking it, not being able to stay full term. So getting positive behaviour support in place is going to actually have such a long-term effect, because I've chatted to other friends about this recently. Are we at a point when we're going to find that there are classrooms full of young people and very few people to teach them, unless we start to support all of these things, one of which would be the challenging behaviours? Because I understand and appreciate that we're seeing a rise in things like the diagnosis of neurodivergency, a rise in anxiety in young people, a rise in mental health issues, without the really proper training in place to deal with that, other than what I've trained myself in effectively by being interested and curious and reading books. And that's the difference. I've gone out of my way to give myself training, but
Exactly.
What do we do about that? I mean, it's, and again, there is no sort of answer, is there? But I think unless we do something about it.
There is an answer.
I say there isn't. That's what I really mean. Is it what I'm saying is, how easy is it to implement the answer? How is the answer going to be implemented? How are we going to improve this?
I think when we have our allegiance to children and not a curriculum, then we will be able to serve children and teachers in the way that they need. I think, we spend billions over here in the US on curriculum, new curriculum every year. And it's hurting teachers, it's hurting children, and teachers aren't getting the behavior support or training that they need. So there just needs to be more investment in that and making parent training non-negotiable, non-optional.
And I guess I'm purely speculating here, so correct me if I'm wrong, that your fears on curriculum might be that the curriculum is very heavily overloaded towards academia, maybe, and there's a need for more opportunities to be out, opportunities to be nature, opportunities to move, to be young people. You know, if you're planting somebody to you're stapling somebody to a chair from 9 till 3 every day or whatever the hours are in the States, for some that's not.
And when we pledge our allegiance back to children, then yeah, their environment would change. You know, the setting, the beings and the things to become more appropriate. We'd have school gardens so kids get super healthy food.
Mm-hmm.
We would have teachers that, you know, are actually able to truly enjoy what they do and not have all these boxes, these ridiculous, developmentally inappropriate push down academic boxes that they have to check. Yeah. The kids would leave school less stressed, parent home life would be less stressed. And so that alone would change a lot. But even still, parents still need to do their part and become better educated.
There are a couple of things there. I mean, certainly I think in terms of the school doing its part to improve home life, can also work the other way as well, home improving school. But certainly I've noticed that when young people move from a challenging mainstream setting into an SEND setting where I teach, there is almost a weight taken off their shoulders immediately. And at least in the short term, they get an immediate report back from many parents that everything at home has got better because a lot of that pressure has been taken away because we have greater flexibility, a bit more creativity. I'm becoming a firm believer in significantly reducing the number of hours of learning a day. I think you could do it in 2. I really do. And then take the rest of the day for other things that are more practical, more beneficial, more life skills based.
So where I think I would love to invite a different terminology is if we can, like, learning can't be taken out of play. It can't be taken out of a conversation. So in my mind, when you said learning, I automatically flipped it to academics. So
I guess that's what I was meaning as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're learning when we bring in back like the home economics and the gardening and, you know, all these other beautiful. My kid is in a Waldorf school, and so they do knitting and, you know, Spanish or whatever the alternative languages. That's all learning, and it's not so much pressure. But yeah, when I actually don't even allow homework into my home because my child being at school for 7 hours a day is plenty. When she's home, she's on my time. We've got plenty to do. Don't worry. We're cooking and cleaning and, you know, contributing and having conversations and connecting and laughing and loving. And there is no time for homework.
And do you think sometimes knitting is a great example because in our household, knitting is a winter activity, and scarves and gloves and hats on the sofa at night. The girls are just, you know, knocking out sort of Christmas presents and things. But at the end of that, there is no certificate or qualification in knitting. And I think sometimes, therefore, some people don't see that as learning. It's seen as, oh, that's just a lovely little hobby you do at home. There are people out there making a lot of money from knitting. You know, there are industries around. There are people running businesses, and everything can be, I don't want to say monetized, but everything can become a career, can't it? Everything can become a passion and something you can pursue as your job.
Yeah.
Gardening,
Not only
cooking.
Yes. But when we either tell a kid or an adult, like, oh, knitting, that's cute. Like, we tell them that the thing that you enjoy isn't worth your time. You're actually wasting your time. You know what I mean? And so then we have, you know, that kind of goes into self-care. Oh, I was enjoying this for some freedom that I love to do. But it's bad because it's not productive, or it's not, it's a waste of time. Okay, now I feel guilty about it. And even though I was making it for my aunt who's sick, but okay, I'll do it later when I have a little bit of free time that I don't need to be productive in. And so, wow.
But actually what you're teaching them, and I can see this, my eldest loves cooking and will happily go and cook the meals at home. Not so great on the washing up, but she will cook meals. And I see that, and I can see that is kind of her soothing thing. It chills her out. She loves it. You know, she gets in there. But also now I imagine if she chooses to go on and go to university or older, when she will be, there's a skill she's immediately comfortable with. She's not wondering how to make meals, how to fend for herself, how to do healthy food.
And that's checking so many boxes. Not only is she capable in the kitchen, she's developing her self trust,
Mhm.
but she's serving the family, which goes back to belonging and significance. She belongs in the family and she's contributing. She's significant to the family. And they can say, thank you so much for doing this. And she is highlighting her own goodness for herself. And that's how we propagate good in the world. But yeah, and then of course she can go on and not only maybe make a career out of it, but maybe make some money too. I had a dear friend who she was a great cook and people would pay her to make their meals at school. She was in college and she would have a dinner a couple days a week or something, and they paid her good money to make their meals because the school lunches weren't great. And so, yeah, so many opportunities from that joy. And I think joy is the thing that's missing in so much of school and in what we do.
For some of them, there's not a lot of happiness. And I mean, what's to blame for that? And I'm going to throw this out there because I do feel more and more that I'm finding screens are a real problem in all of this.
Yep.
Access to screens too much, whether that's, particularly, I mean, for young people with online bullying or self-esteem issues or, body image, whatever that happens to be, there is this underlying issue definitely with screens and who's giving them access to that and how much they're having it. And this idea of this 24/7 access, any point day or night, they can access these things that are just, to some extent, sucking the joy. I think that there is. And I think, because I look back to when I was younger and didn't have those things and we had to go and find our friends, we had to go and find things to do together. We had to alleviate our own boredom. And we went out and found joy, didn't we, with our friends? We found things to do, and that created memories and happiness.
And you found authentic joy. And I think what screens do is give a false sense of joy, an immediate sense of false joy. And it takes all the time and space to go find real joy because it's such an easy fix. And then, of course, you got to go out to your friends. That's not even allowed anymore, right? I mean, nowadays, kids, it's really hard unless you have an amazing, amazing neighborhood. It's really difficult for kiddos to just go out, grab a friend or two, head off to the neighborhood park or the woods, and then come back
Yeah,
at dark we
yeah,
got to.
yeah.
And so, and then those opportunities being squished is just so unfortunate because that authentic play and those natural relationships and conflicts that evolved and resolved, that's all facilitated now. And yeah, screens are horrible
And a lot of
for
this,
what they
I
have
just,
done.
yeah, no, I don't disagree. And I think a lot of this is, I try to ensure that mine are outdoors, partly having the dog now, even just going for a walk in the morning with my youngest and chatting about, she loves to spot things in nature, what those birds in the tree, what's that up there, what's happening over there. She has lots of questions. It's lovely. But we kind of had those naturally, I think, when we're out and about. We probably didn't think we were doing it. Learning about, I've turned that rock over, what's that strange insect under there, and it's all that. Certainly looking back now is a big part of my childhood. I mean, touching again on sort of parenting though as well. I know last time we spoke, and I think this is it really piqued my interest actually to talk a little bit about the idea of gentle parenting, which is
Ugh.
I don't think that would be the term that we necessarily use over here. I don't know what the term would be, but it kind of the idea of it immediately resonated because you're absolutely right. I mean, what are your thoughts now? How would you explain gentle parenting, and what is wrong with it, or not wrong with it? What is the narrative around it and the discussion around
Yeah.
it?
I think gentle parenting as an initial framework was great. I mean, in my mind, what it was, don't yell and hit at your kids, respect them as human beings and guide them in ways that, you would like to be guided. But what it has become in so many ways with so many families is permissive parenting because we have forgotten that if we have not replaced our behavior of yelling and hitting and spanking kids with something productive. If we're not going to do those methods of helping kids cooperate and contribute, if we're not replacing those with something more effective and we're just releasing it, then, where's our leadership in the family and how are we getting kiddos to want to cooperate with us and be a part of the team and contribute and all those things. And so, yeah, we have we're creating quite a mess with just backing off. And I think parents are so confused. They're frustrated. Unfortunately, they haven't had the greatest models because most of our parents used very authoritarian methods. And so we didn't have that model of respectful, communication and stuff. And so we're trying our best, which is amazing. I think that's great. I think we're evolving. And I think this had to happen. Often the pendulum swings and it goes too far. And we're like, oh, we need to kind of reorient here. And so I think it's going to come back. I hope, because oh my gosh, what if it doesn't? No, it will. I don't think it has a choice, but as I think parents, we have to become equipped with effective communication strategies if we're not going to use physical manipulation with our kids. Verbally, physically, verbal. Yeah.
And there's a challenge there, isn't there? Because what you're saying really is, it's having conversations with your young people at appropriate times about appropriate things. And for some people, those skills, like you maybe for the reason you've said, is that because that wasn't how they were parented, don't have those skills, haven't developed those skills. And maybe through their schooling experience, haven't developed those skills, or through friendship groups, whatever. So having those conversations with anybody is a challenge, let alone with your kids. And I think for some parents, maybe it doesn't feel like a natural way to deal with children because it puts you on an equitable level, doesn't it? To some extent.
I think parents feel that. And I also think we as parents, they're our kids. We should know this. This should be not this hard. Like, I don't need someone to tell me how to do with my kid. I am their parent. I know how to do this. And it's a skill. Parenting is a high level skill and it can be so joyful. Yeah. As I've watched this gentle parenting movement kind of become this permissive parenting movement, I really think it's okay for parents to be the leader of your family. Your child is equal to you in essence and in a human being, but you are their leader. Now, that doesn't mean to be a jerk to them, and it doesn't mean to boss them around all the time, but they need you to be strong. And with that comes your own models of taking accountability because you're not perfect. Like, those pieces that we really need to do, but we don't need to be afraid to be a strong leader for our family. And we can still have the utmost respect and adoration for our children as well. I think kids need a leader. They're going to naturally find one in a group of children. Like, be the natural leader of your family. That's fine. And I think what you said is a really big part of it. I think we can be friends to our kids too, but I think they need to see us as a natural leader.
Do you think as well there may be sort of a cultural element to this, that we lead in the West a very, very busy life? We're trying to make money, to buy things, to live our lives, and the parents are they're on the treadmill a bit, aren't they? And I guess looking back to my childhood, that's what's happened with my parents. We were at school and then we're out playing, and then you're in bed, and then you're in school, then you're out playing. And I guess parents, I'm not saying we parented ourselves, but there was certainly an element of us looking after ourselves maybe a little bit more with our friends during our free time. And the expectation on parents is that they're finding all of that a challenge. And unfortunately, the solution for many can be harking back again to almost the screens and the iPads and the tablets. And I know parents would hold their hands up and say that's what we've ended up doing because we just don't know what else to do. And we haven't got time for this. It's a bit of a...
if we're not, we've got to become really comfortable in the uncomfortable. It used to be, you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And the kid would stop crying. Don't cry, I can't handle it. You don't want to cry, I don't want you to cry, here's a screen. Our parents didn't model that for us. Like, oh, you're really upset. Cool. Let's just sit in this.
I'm sure you wouldn't have to look too hard maybe to find some cultures where the idea of the extended family, you talked John about having people to look up to, like the elders and younger people having a purpose in that society because they were learning from their adults who also looked up to the elders. And maybe there was, maybe here we haven't got that system in place as such, that maybe young people and adults, parents don't always know their place because we've taken that away by quite rightly moving away from hitting and yelling. Like you said, it hasn't been replaced with anything, and there's no modelling of, nobody knows what to do. We just know we can't do that anymore.
Yep. And a big piece of the pie too is Parents don't have community anymore. We used to see
Mm,
auntie and grandma and auntie and uncle, and we could see like, oh, I loved that tool that they used. I'm going to use that. Oh, I don't like how they're approaching that kid. I'm not going to do that. Like those models aren't really here. And,
mm,
and they don't have people to talk to. They don't, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and the amount of parents that have such a hard time if their child isn't included in the playground. And I know with kiddos with disabilities, that's a whole nother level of exclusion that just is heartbreaking. And where I'm going with this is we need to be equipping our kids to the best of our abilities to handle those things instead of rescuing them. Now there's things we can do, to try and get our kids included. That's wonderful. But in my mind, what my job is as a parent is to equip my kid to the biggest degree possible. And every time I rescue her, I'm chopping down her that sturdiness of her capabilities. And rescuing is in any form, bringing her homework if she, well, we don't do homework, but whatever it is, if she overspilled the pasta dish and okay, now she's got, a big mess of pasta water, which is super fun to clean up, as we all know. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, just not, just being comfortable. Now, I guess what I want to say at this point is I would help her in that moment because now I feel like I need to dig into this little second. I'm going to use that as an opportunity to model generosity and connectedness. So I wouldn't use it as a rescuing opportunity. I'd be like, oh, wow, that's a big job. Can I help? What should I grab? The towel? And I'm
yeah.
gonna help her in this very specific modeling and connected way. That is the only time, at least that I really try for when I rescue my kids. But I see so many parents falter at their child's discomfort. And I would just invite us to find your power there and sit with them, because the more times that they're able to sit through that, the stronger they get and can get through the next one quicker. That is a skill and a resiliency that they're building. And when we rescue, again, we're chopping at those capabilities.
I think you're right. There's something in that. I mean, a little example, just thinking about, when I was younger and you would, simple, like you'd fall over and cut your knee, but you wouldn't bother going to your parent because you'd look,
Mm.
oh, I'm not bleeding to death. You'd rub a bit of spit on it and carry on. But now, and I do find this school as well, young people are running at you all the time for minor things, wanting a first aid situation. You go, just a little bruise, just, rub some spit on it. You'll be fine.
Or
Um,
or don't run, you might fall.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll be honest, Megan. Since having kids, I have to check myself sometimes with the word careful because
Yeah.
it seems to come out a bit too often. Honestly, look at my ear, and I do, and I check myself. When I see them hurt themselves, and you go, no, they're fine. Even if they're crying, they're not upset, and they won't be upset in a minute. And you are right. That kind of need to run, isn't there? So how do we get parents on board then? That's the question. With this, how do we get parents on board?
Hmm. It's like they think that is the question. I've created a resource, and so how do I so what I also serve parents. I serve nature schools mostly, but I came from serving parents as well. And what I found is there is, in my opinion, no greater connecting, motivating activity than cooking with our kids, than connecting in the kitchen. In fact, my whole parenting program is called the Connecting in the Kitchen Method. It is not about cooking. There's some skills that can be sprinkled in, but it is about effective communication and learning to pause and wait and model and say this because of this. It's really teaching those behavioral skills for the parent so they can impart those to the child. And so I've, you know, I've created a little system of helping schools and educators look through their day and empower kids to come along with them. What do you want to take home tonight into the kitchen with your parents? Like, I would do that homework. And it can be one tiny thing. Or it could be big. We could take social studies and science. We could take every subject into the kitchen with, with parents. Also, parents have a myriad of other things to do, but empowering them to do what you can. I often say, you can do one tiny task for 1 minute and be done and build from there. And so, Yeah, just bridging that gap of school and home in a positive way. Homework does not do that. I believe homework tears families down. Unless that child is so motivated by it and inspired by it, and that's a connection point for the family, great. Then homework is a great idea for that family. But I think most of the time it's a really stressful and contention point, and there is no time for that. There's too much healing that needs to be happening in a family. And I think cooking can get us there because there's so many opportunities to serve others and to slow down and connect. And um,
I think that I do this, but I haven't really thought about it in the way that you've described there. Now, I'll touch on homework just really briefly because I'm fully in agreement that it doesn't have a purpose for so many young people. There are a minority, I think, who do genuinely enjoy it. They love homework and they love academia, and that's great for those young people. But I think you're right; it's a burden. It's extra time that young people haven't got. They need to do other things. They can struggle with it. It creates a barrier. It creates issues with parents. There's all sorts of negative to it, isn't it? But I love this idea because I've done it over the years. No, my eldest loves cooking in the kitchen. We've cooked since she was little.
yeah.
And she's always been the one to stir. And at that time, you put some music on, you have a chat, you catch up, and you are right to say that they are learning because you're guiding them, but you're not instructing them. There's a lot of questions go on there, or some gentle nudges, and so I think it's a lovely idea. Actually, I'd like to hear more about that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Helping a parent find the power in, just do we want this kind of cheese or this kind of cheese? And when we ask a choice from our child and they're able to tell us what they want and we can say yes, wow, we have elevated them a notch. They're able to have more tolerance for next time we need to give a correction. We're balanced. And so really helping parents learn those skills, and those skills are amazing and they're life changing, and just empowering parents to want to do that.
And I get a sense, I get a sense with a lot of the parents of over the years I've been teaching, of young people that I've been teaching, that sometimes they feel they haven't got the time, having the time to do things with their kids, but they're so busy, but everyone's got to eat. So actually,
Yep.
that does, and also, there's got to be an absolute advantage there to teach young people about not cooking processed foods, cooking meals, eating healthily. The impact on physical and mental health into adulthood is going to be, there's all sorts could come from that, couldn't there? There's a whole sort of, yeah, maybe you should have your own podcast just on that, at least your own YouTube channel. I don't know, or have you?
Of course, but all the logistics behind it are that's the
Oh,
challenge.
yeah. Well, I have an idea a day normally for something that I should be doing on YouTube or a podcast. I have to sort of like write
Yeah.
the list. It gets longer and longer and longer. So I guess that kind of touches most on gentle parenting, doesn't it? But but it's not just work with parents, is it? You work with schools as well. I know we spoke briefly prior to recording about the idea of the emergent curriculum, which I think I would call the engagement curriculum. It sounds like a similar sort of thing. So it's definitely worth kind of touching on that as a way of learning and tying it into your positive behaviour support, because I think it does. I think for some young people, it really is a way of improving engagement and behaviour, isn't it? So
It really.
would you like to explain that?
Oh yes, this is yes.
Oh no! I just opened the can of worms opened. Here we go.
Oh man. So yeah, we would call it emergent curriculum over here, I think. And what's funny is I didn't start this in my school initially. What's really funny is I saw what preschools out there were doing. I'm like, oh no, I'm not. I can do better. And then so I started my own preschool, and I was doing exactly everything they were doing. The themes, and we're going to make, volcanoes on a Tuesday in November, but not any other time because that's not what I have arranged. And that kind of goes back to the cult thinking too. And I'll swing back to this, but we repeat patterns if we don't actively change them. We just naturally repeat them because it's comfortable. And so that goes back, forward to parenting, or, parenting. If we want to do different, we need to learn different skills, or we're just going to falter back to old habits. So that kind of touches on both of that. But when I had my preschool, I was just feeling like things weren't how I thought they would be. And I remember we were outside and one of the kiddos was observing a ladybug. And I don't know, my own guides above me were like, just do nothing, just watch and wait. And so I did. And through the kiddos and me popping in once in a great while, but through their inquiry, they wondered from this little ladybug crawling on a branch all the way to if space had a smell. And so, like, that's not something I've ever wondered by myself or ever had the time to wonder or had people around me just being, in our space wondering. And so we researched it, and just for anyone out there who is curious, according to astronauts, space does have a smell. It smells like kind of like rusty steel. So apparently that's what space smelled like. But it was
So
at
much
that
to unpick
moment.
there. So much to unpick in that statement, isn't there? Space has a rusty smell. I mean,
Right.
Before you go on, equally getting from ladybirds to how does space smell?
Yeah. That was the moment that I really discovered the power of these kiddos. They don't need me to direct their day. They don't need all my wisdom imparted on them. They are naturally brilliant, and what they need me to do is step back and be invited in. That, I hope they have that memory. I will carry that memory forever. And I don't remember anything I learned at school really that hit my soul, but that moment hit my soul. And so that's the power of emergent curriculum, or like you said, engagement curriculum. And we can, as we practice this, we can sprinkle those, higher level vocabulary words or whatever we feel would be important, but we do it with intention. We do it sparingly so the kiddos can receive it, and it doesn't become an environment all about us and what I need. It's about the kids and what they need.
And I think what you described there is the way to create curious adults, because I think to some extent school beats that curiosity out of you sometimes by that constantly being told what it is and what moment of what day you're going to be learning this, that, and the other. It's never allowed to be that, never have that spontaneousness, is it? And I think it raises the issue as well that really you're told what to learn in school, but all knowledge is worthwhile. Nobody has really said to me, I don't remember that question, what does space smell like, would probably highly likely have come up in a school setting. Yes, it came up, and it's a great question. And the process of learning from that is going to be the same as any research that you would have done for any topic you were told to learn in school. And yet, but what you're doing is you're creating a child who thinks, oh, this is fun. Curiosity is fun. Learning is fun. I can find out anything I want to find out. I can either ask the right person, or I can go to a book, or I can go to the internet, whatever it happens to be. And I love this about kids. My youngest is very much like this. She opens her eyes and asks a question most mornings, and it will be, it can be anything, to how many stripes on a tiger? It could be absolutely any, you don't know what it's going to be or where it's come from. And I think that's the strange thing with young people as well, is that the way their minds work, I don't think they know how their minds work with these questions. It's like their mind is churning away separate to them, I think sometimes. But it's quite brave as an educator to try and step away from that and allow that to happen. Because you're not in charge.
Brave. You know what? Yeah, brave. And I think, that phrase of we're not in charge, I think if we can view that as I'm in charge of my own words and body here and take power in that, like we do have we need to be in charge and we need to have control. And if we can just refocus that on ourselves and give ourselves permission and know that that's the best thing we should be doing right then it can give us more space and permission to do that. Like I'm in charge and I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, and I'm just observing. And I'm waiting to be invited in to elevate a little if that's what the kiddos need. But if they're in a good dialogue, I know that I need to step back. So I'm in charge of myself. And I think if we can empower more educators to do that, then they'll feel better. Okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to be busy making sure everyone's learning, because, when we take play out of learning, then we get really confused.
And that doesn't negate the fact that young people need to learn the core skills to be able to learn, such as the reading and writing and some arithmetic and some research skills and how to use a computer safely and all those sort of things, be able to find things out. And I think sometimes there is that confusion that when you say, an engagement curriculum or an emerging curriculum, well, it's chaos, isn't it? How is that going to happen? Well, you still have to have the skills, but actually you are developing a really core skill by following that type of learning, aren't you? Because the learning is as you go through life. If you want to find something out, you can find something out. Or you can ask questions, or you can go to people, or it's the process, isn't it? As much as anything. Whereas actually, as you know, in school, a lot of the process is here's the knowledge in a book or a PowerPoint or a presentation, and you're going to remember it and regurgitate it back. But as you've just said, what do you remember from school? The few things I do remember are often not anything to do with the classroom learning. It's to do with the teacher or an emotional connection or a person or a conversation or something that happened. It's not to do with very often the exams. It's a really interesting debate, isn't it? And I'm quite lucky in that I thrive off chaos. I thrive off chaos in learning. Every year I get teaching assistants and they have to almost have a little lecture at the start. They just have to strap in and hold on because this is going to go a bit bouncy. There are certain teaching assistants who can work with me, and some probably find me far too challenging to work with for that reason. It's just, I will set off in the morning doing one thing, half an hour later on a completely different topic, and you just got to keep up.
Well, you're meeting the kids' needs as they come up. That's how that should look, in my opinion. You're the box, and you're meeting their needs. And when we try and shove all kids in a box and think that they don't have different needs, well, that's where we are right now. It's
quite a skill set, because I always assumed that everybody could do it. I always assumed that everybody could follow a road and then just deviate off all these little pathways and then reconnect some point further up, or just not reconnect. It didn't matter. But there's a certain comfort zone with doing that, and I think a lot of people don't have that. I think it's a real mindset change for some people to be able to go, well, that's not the lesson. No, it's not, but let's just go with it and see what happens. We still learn something at the end of the day. Yeah, so really it's an interesting way of kind of thinking about things, isn't it?
I think it comes, with belonging and significance comes trust, and that self-trust. And so, unfortunately, as our education model goes into the university years, that top-down education, let me impart my wisdom onto you, we don't allow these early educators to develop their own self-trust. And so they need a very controlled classroom. They need everyone to do exactly what they're told. And, following the kids' individual needs is out of their capacity so much of the time. And it's actually something that's frowned down upon. If you don't have an organized classroom, you're not a good teacher. And because how can you possibly make sure they are learning the 27 things they need to learn this day? So they have no self-trust, or little.
I think sometimes my classroom causes some people to hyperventilate because they walk in and it's kind of a bit of unfinished. There's always there's multiple projects on the side, so finishing at any one moment that we started yesterday but hadn't planned to do, so it's not finished. And I do get that some people aren't as comfortable with that, maybe as I am, but I do think it sets you up. Like the university example is a good one there because it's continuing, isn't it? I have the knowledge, here's the knowledge for you. But actually what we need to be empowering people to do is to trust their own gathering of knowledge as well. Who's to say that person's right? You're allowed to have your own opinion, learn your own way, aren't you? And learn your own things. And the number of people I know who have not done well in school, but who have a significant knowledge base that they've just decided they want to learn about something. They've just gone out of their way after school and learned an awful lot, but then can't really use it because you've got no qualification in inverted commas to kind of prove, that's worth passing on. That's something I can use. Yeah, this is a really interesting chat. And I think at some point we ought to get back together and have another one, really, because I don't feel like we've really scratched the surface.
Yeah, I think what I've been waiting for an opportunity to circle back to, when I said that my husband and I, we weren't the initial parents that let's get more knowledge and do a better job. We had to do that. But after that first class, we made it date night every night after that. And it was something we looked forward to. And that's what I invite parents to really lean into is, pull in your parenting partner or a family member or a friend, make it a date night of elevating your learning. And so that you're reinforcing the right things, you feel better about parenting, and so that your kids thrive, so your family thrives. And I'm speaking to schools too, because, educators, 99% of us are parents also. So we can also, we can do better. I'm just going to say it. We can all do better. I can do better. And this is what I do every day. And so, yeah, make it a thing. And really just, instead of taking it as a personal attack, that I should know everything already, because that feels horrible and doesn't solve anything and is a very defeating spiral there. Just leaning into that and going on this new journey. And I think the world will be better for it.
I think that's a lovely point to end on, because that's kind of talking about what is needed is this mindset change, a positive mindset change. That yes, a lot of things that we talked about could be perceived as negative, behaviors, environments, all those sort of things. But actually change, as you've said, is possible. And actually, that could start with educators, but it could also be parents as well. And you're right, parenting is tough. It's a tough old game, isn't it? And I think if people can reflect on that and say, actually, we are doing quite well on this. We are doing well on this. Then, and like you said, keep learning.
There's so many parenting coaches out there. And the cool thing is, if you find you don't like one, great. You learned a thing or two. You learned what you didn't like, so you don't do it and why, and move on to the next. There's so many programs and coaches out there to give nuggets and ideas that, you like maybe never would have come across, on your own. So, and then you're in a group with other parents asking amazing questions too, all with the goal of elevating just a little bit. And, the thing that I look for is my moments of hypocrisy. Those are the moments that I want to highlight for my kiddo. I left the yogurt out on the counter this morning. I was like, oh, hypocrisy, mommy. And, we want our kids to do better every day. We expect them to do better every day. How can we be doing that in an intentional way?
And I think as well, it doesn't have to be that we don't all have to be doing it the same. It's like with teaching. There isn't necessarily one way of teaching. In the same way, there's not one way of being a parent. But like you've said, you should almost pick from that buffet and take what works for you, reject what doesn't, or adapt what doesn't. But keep working on it is the thing, isn't it? I think that's what I've learned in teaching over 25 years. You've just got to keep adapting. If I tried to do now what I was doing when I was in my early 20s, blimey, I don't know. I think I would have imploded by now. That's been a really useful conversation. I think people will get a lot from it. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge. And I've really enjoyed that. And I think I've learned a lot as well. So hopefully let's get together again in the future and do a part 2. So Meagan, thank you very much for coming on. How can our listeners access more information about you and what you do?
The best place to reach me is on Facebook. Find my name, Meagan D. Duncan. You can reach me through my business page, Connected Kids Thrive. I invite everyone, if you're in nature school especially, go to my Positive Behavior Guide group. And I have lots of tips and strategies in there. But yeah, Connected Kids Thrive is my business. And you can email me too at meagan@connectedkidsthrive.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions or, yeah.
And I will make sure that all of the links to the Facebook pages and anything else are on the bottom of the podcast so that people can connect to that as well. And thank you again so much for coming on. And we will hopefully chat again in the future because I'd love to chat more about all of the things we've spoken about tonight.
I would love to be back. You were great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.